Hey there, YouTube land. Today I'm going to show you how to disassemble and reassemble a vintage Zebco 33. This particular one was made between 1965 and 1968. But this will apply to many variants of it. So let's get started. So the things you're going to need: a nickel, or if you can, a big flathead screwdriver, but I'll explain why I use a nickel instead in a moment. If you live outside of the US, any coin that's about the same size as a nickel will work. A 5/16 socket or wrench, or if you are on the metric system, an 8mm socket or wrench. Small flathead screwdriver. Now this is a bit because I have a ratcheting screwdriver that I can interchange bits with, but a small flathead screwdriver, and that's all you really need. So first thing we're going to do is loosen the cover lock screw. And now the reason I use the nickel is because this is a little elliptical and a nickel fits the slot about perfect. So you'll go counterclockwise to loosen it, like so. And then you turn the covers, the back cover counterclockwise, the covers counterclockwise to remove them. Oh, and you also want a tray to keep your parts in. Forgot to mention that. But anyway, the covers come off, and now you're into the gearing. So what I'm going to do now is take the spinner head off. What you do is you hold the handle, turn the spinner head counterclockwise so you hear a pop, and you unloosen it. And then we take our little flathead screwdriver, and on these, some of the variants, there's a screw that holds your retainer plate in. Some of them there's a little tab you push over, but in this case it has a screw with the retainer plate. So you loosen the screw. You do not have to remove it. Loosen the screw, push the retainer plate down, loosen your drag all the way, which in this case I forgot to do, but I'll do it right now. And I'll show you why you loosen your drag all the way to get the spool off in a minute. Oh, there it goes. So, if you can see in there, there's a little metal tab. That regulates the tension on your spool for your drag. So when you turn it on, or when you tighten the drag, it moves out. Not sure if you can see that or not. See, it's moving. And there it is. Oops. That fell out, but I'll show you how to get that back in. And when you loosen it, it's the opposite, it goes in. So, anyway, let me loosen that back all the way up. Even though the tab fell out. You don't have to remove the tab, but sometimes it can fall out. But you can get it back in pretty easily. So now what I'm going to do is remove the handle. So, I'm going to take my 5/16 socket, loosen the nut, and the handle comes off. And then there's a crossbar that pushes a brake, this little brake thing with an O-ring in it. You push up on the arms of it, and the arm, or this part, has two tabs on it, as you can see. You take that out, take the brake shoe off, and then then you have to get the gears out. So I'm going to switch back to my little flathead screwdriver. So this is your gear adjustment clip. Now only the aluminum bodied Zebco 33s will have this. The plastic bodied ones will not. So you loosen that screw and take that off. Then you pull your main gear in. Let's turn the anti-reverse off first. You push your main gear in, you push your pinion gear out, And then to get the main gear out, a lot of times you have to fumble with the brake click. Okay. So now pretty much it's completely disassembled as far as you need to go. So now let's begin reassembly. So the first thing I like to do is put the gears back in. So there's a hole right there. Take the main shaft of your gear and it goes in that hole. And it'll come out another hole on the other side, like so. Then you take the pinion gear in. You take your pinion gear, and there's a hole in the middle. Oops. And you put your pinion gear through there until it seats. Okay. And it'll look like that. Now you could put... Now, I'm going to save the gear adjuster for last, and I'll explain why in a minute when I get to that point. So now I'm going to put the brake chute back on with the O-ring in. Now one of the things that, or one of the problems I should say, that I sometimes run into with these is that the O-ring will get all dried and cracked up, and when it breaks you have to get a new one. But thankfully a lot of hardware stores will sell O-rings, and you can usually find an O-ring for this. So just a little warning about that. And there's two slots in the top, and that's where the arms go in, or the legs, whatever you want to call them. They go in those slots like so. Then you take your bar, your crossbar, and you put it in the hole in the pinion gear. And then, like I said, you got the tabs, and on the bottom of the arms there's slots. So you have to line those up. I'm going to try to keep this on camera, but I can't promise anything. This is going to be off camera. And it should look like that. And now I'm going to put the gear adjuster back in. And the reason I'm saving that for last is because a lot of times with these aluminum body 33s, you kind of have to play around with the gear adjuster to get your gear mesh just right. You know, you can move it in, out, up, down, you know, that kind of thing. So then you put your screw in there, but don't tighten it all the way down, just enough so it stays in and doesn't fall out. So then you have to move your gear adjuster around. I often found I have to kind of put it in an angle like so, typically. Or actually, not on this one, that's a different one I'm thinking about. So I'm going to just kind of adjust it until I get it where I like it. So I'm going to tighten my screw down and test that. You don't want it too far in because your gears will be forced together and they'll be pressed together so they won't move. If you don't want it too far out, because then they never mesh. So I'm going to get my handle, put that on real quick and test it. Okay, it's working good. I got it where I wanted it, which is nice. So let's go up top. So like I said, I'll show you how to put this back in. Now, it's a little bent tab of metal. The long end goes in the little brass post right here, and the short end goes on to the outside, and that's what creates your tension on the inside of the spool. So long end in, short end out. So there's a slot in the little brass post, and sometimes you need a pair of pliers to get it in. Whoops, I dropped it. Thankfully I got had a book underneath to catch it. I got to get a rubber mat so that way they don't fall on the carpet. So I'm going to go and put this back in the post, and I'll show you what it's supposed to look like. Now when you put it back in, you have to turn your drag all the way on so you can see the slot easier. In this case. So that's what I'm going to do. Alright, it's all the way on. Hopefully you can see the slot now. I know it's kind of tough to see, but just slot in there. So like I said, long end in, short end out. Like that. So now it's loosened the drag all the way up, so that way it gets out of the way. so we can put our spool back on. Okay, take the spool, put it back on. Now we push the retainer plate out, tighten down the screw, and you don't have to over tighten it, just till it's snug, like so. And now I'm going to put the handle on right now. Take my spinner head and then turn it clockwise to tighten it on there. So it's snug, like so, like that. And then I'm going to put my covers on. Turn that counterclockwise to put it back on. Hold on, I got to thread the line through the cap. If you don't have line on it yet, then don't worry about this. But if you do, you got to thread through the cap. And if you're going to spool it up after, you'll have to thread your line through the cap. But I already have this spooled up. Oops. Dropping things all over today. So now let's put the handle back on. Put our nut back on. Our handle nut. And then we take our 5/16 socket, or like I said, you can use a 5/16 open end wrench, or in the metric countries, an 8mm socket or wrench. So we're going to tighten that up. Make sure this is untightened. And you just tighten that till it's snug. Now I take my nickel, or any coin that's the same size roughly, and tighten my cover lock screw down. Just till it's snug. You don't have to, just like that, just till it's snug. Don't over tighten, like I said. Alright, drag's nice. It's kind of hard to hear the clicker over the air conditioner. Let me tighten it a little, make sure that's good. Alright. Now let me reel my line up. There. Alright, drilling in nice and smooth. I'm just going to check one thing, because sometimes the crossbars can pop out. In this case it was not, so that's good. Alright. It's working nice and smooth. And that is how you disassemble and reassemble a vintage Zebco 33. I hope this was helpful, and thank you for watching. And if you haven't already, please like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you.